Hello everyone, my name is Alan Chen, and this is my midterm presentation for CIS 3367. The purpose of this presentation is to select a topic of interest and analyze data concerning that topic. For this presentation, I've observed Airbnb data in New York City. This data set is publicly available through this link inside Airbnb.com. Now, it's important to note that this data set is not released by Airbnb themselves, but by a third party that cleans and scrapes the information directly from Airbnb. For those of you who aren't familiar with Airbnb, it is an online platform that connects people with homes and people looking for a short-term stay at these homes. The company is widely successful and has revolutionized the real estate industry around the world, but is facing backlash from the government and other business interests. Personally, I've used Airbnb a few times, and I always found my experience to be rather satisfying. Airbnb is almost always more affordable than hotels, and it allows me to interact more with the local culture because the hosts of these homes tend to be natives. And we can start by examining the raw data right here. The columns in bold came with the data, and the columns not in bold, or just occupancy 365, was a column I created myself. Now, occupancy 365 was created by taking 365 days in a year and subtracting it from availability 365, because I believe how long a listing is occupied is more descriptive than how long it is available, or how much of the year is available. For the purposes of this presentation, I've used Power View and dashboards. I won't go into detail on how I created both of these. It isn't too exciting, but let's start off with Power View. So before I dive into data too much, the Power View was created to identify and visualize the most popular borough in New York City. And for all data, I made sure that the number of reviews that's shown in the data for these listings has to be greater or equal to 5, because I believe that just makes it more credible if you have listings with more reviews than 0. And I figured 5 was a good number. Now, as you can see, most of these listings are located in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Manhattan with 6,000 roughly, and Brooklyn with 3,600, while the least amount is located in Bronx with 219, and in Staten Island, a little sliver here. It's hard to see. 20, yeah, still there. It's a small sliver. And I believe the reason for this is that many people that come to visit New York City are tourists, and they come for the sightseeing locations, which are located in Manhattan, which would explain why most of these listings, the number of views that people visit, are in Manhattan. It's just more popular. While on the other hand, it's located in Brooklyn, but if we look more closely at Brooklyn, we'll notice that a lot of these location lists that people review in Brooklyn are close to Manhattan, while the ones over here aren't as close and are much more sparse in deep Brooklyn. Now, my argument as to why Manhattan tends to have more listings overall, in general, is because it has more reviews of these listings, is because most of these apartments are most likely owned by higher income people who can afford to purchase multiple residencies and list them on Airbnb. Bronx, on the other hand, has lower income and can't do that. And also it's the fact that Bronx might have least reviews because it has a negative association with crime and is a bit far up when you relate it to the sightseeing sites in Manhattan. And Staten Island is a little bit quiet, actually, and it's a little bit far and difficult to reach Manhattan. As many people from Staten Island know, you can reach it by ferry or by train, but the options are very limited. And you really don't want to stay on Staten Island if you came to New York City to sightsee. Now, these claims are just speculative thoughts, and I believe that further analysis with the census and income data would verify my claims. Now, the dashboard focuses more on the popularity and cost of each room type in New York City. The clustered column chart on the upper left-hand side will tell us the average price of each borough. As expected, Manhattan is the most expensive by far in terms of location and because due to location and real estate prices compared to the other boroughs, and the other boroughs reflects location and real estate prices. Bronx tends to have lower real estate prices. And the cluster column chart on the upper right hand side will tell us the average price based on room type. Now, a little explanation about these room types before I go on. Shared room is essentially you share a room. Pretty straightforward. Private room, you have your own space. But shared in private rooms, you have to share a bathroom most likely, a kitchen, and public space. such as the living room. Those places aren't usually private. But in an entire home/apartment, you have everything to yourself, whether it be the bathroom, the kitchen, the living space. It's all yours. It's completely private and closed off. And as you can see, it's much more expensive at $205 on average compared to the other two room types. And a good explanation for this is that it's probably due to the amenities in space. Entire homes/apartments tend to be much larger and include more appliances and additional benefits. Rooms tend to be smaller, and might explain why they're similar in price. Based on the pie chart on the lower left-hand side, it's the number of reviews by room type. We'll see that entire homes/apartments and private rooms are relatively equal and dominate shared rooms, very small, 2%. And the reason for this is probably due to the fact that people still value privacy a lot. They would like and prefer their own space. Now, if we look into the lower right-hand side, we'll see the average occupancy by borough. We'll see that Brooklyn and Manhattan are occupied more throughout the year and are more popular. But just one thing I want to clarify is that the high occupancy does not necessarily mean people stayed longer. It just means the listing is usually booked throughout the year, which can mean it's more popular. And you'll see that across all room types, Brooklyn and Manhattan are more popular. Now, if we play with the filters a little bit, especially with the borough filter, we'll notice that in Brooklyn, entire homes/apartments and private rooms are relatively equal. But if you go over to Manhattan, the same thing holds. Entire homes and apartments are a little bit more than private rooms, but very close. And if we go to Bronx, we'll see that 71% are private rooms. And the same can be said for Queens, 62%, and Staten Island, 64%. Private rooms are more popular in Staten Island, Queens, and Bronx. And homes/apartments are more popular in Brooklyn and Manhattan. And we're not really sure why this is the case. Does it suggest that homes/apartments in Manhattan and Brooklyn are more desirable than the other three boroughs? And there could be various factors that led to this difference. We're not really sure. But let's take a look at the room type slicer. So entire homes/apartments. We'll see here the average price by borough. That's a lot more expensive in Manhattan and Staten Island and Brooklyn. If we look at the private rooms, we'll see that it's much lower in price. Same can be said for shared rooms. It's even lower in price on average across these boroughs. And this confirms this chart of the average price by room type across all boroughs. Entire homes/apartments just are more expensive. You'll see in this average price graph as I was going through with the room type. Now let's play with the neighborhood filter, which I find is very interesting because it allows you to actually find your own neighborhood here and just explore and see what's happening in your neighborhood in terms of Airbnb or foreigners coming to visit your locations and stay at your locations. Now for fun, let's look at neighborhood around Baruch, Gramercy. We'll see that most of Gramercy is entire homes/apartments, and it's very expensive to live in Gramercy, more so on average than all the other boroughs combined together, on average. But besides Gramercy, let's look at the Flatiron District, and that's even more expensive at $311 compared to $205 on average. But let's say just in Manhattan, it's $232. So Flatiron District is a lot more expensive, and this is probably due to the fact that a lot of businesses and restaurants are located in the area, and it's very popular with these type of entities, which makes it difficult for people to rent out or list their locations. Now, the filter is important. This neighborhood filter is important because it tells you if your area may or may not be becoming dominated with visitors from other parts of the world. It lets you see if your area is becoming more culturally diverse for short periods of time. Airbnb is a great service, and I would encourage anyone traveling to give it a chance. Thank you.